Hey, what's up, guys? Andrew from American Musical Supply here, and I'm joined today by Mr. Michael Ashby, Grammy award-winning engineer. How you doing, Michael?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. Thank you for joining me today. We're going to
Yeah.
talk a little bit about your career and maybe about some of the gear that you use. And just to get us started, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got your start as an engineer?
So I got my start as an engineer when well, you mean start with working with a well-known artist or start with
Oh,
just in the
just
field
in
in
general.
general?
Where'd you
So the
uh,
field, yeah, the
interest
field in
in music and
general,
audio?
I dived into unintentionally when I think I had a growing curiosity with recording myself on the drums because I started out as a musician first, and then before I knew it, it transitioned from being just on the drums to like recording myself on the drums and trying to perfect the mix down of that recording. And then eventually I found myself diving into the world of like audio engineering. This is how it is. This is what a good compressed kick drum or snare drum sounds like. This is what a bad one sounds like. And me finding out, like, oh shit, that did. I'm sorry, I don't know if but what to do and what not to do.
Right.
And then you learn, and you take these pieces and you carry it on to the next stage, and you refine your craft little by little over time. So that's
Gotcha.
how but it happened a while ago. Like I would say a good 10 plus years ago now.
Okay.
It's when
And
I
did you end up studying anywhere?
then later on down the line, about 7 to 8 years into it, I went to SAE Institute, really
Okay.
just to, at that point, I felt like, I was like, since I was already doing it, just as like, okay, a taught myself type of thing. And you learn from mistakes type of thing and working with the clients and growing type of thing. Since I'd gone through it like 6, 7 years, I was like, I just really just need the paper degree to like put myself in the places where I can be exposed to more A-list clients and let them see that I can, do what I do. And then before I knew it, I was able to fill in any little cracks of what I didn't know or what I may have had a different concept of going through school, and even like more solidified my whole already having the experience in the field thing. And it basically kind of gave me the backing of, all right, this is why things are the way it is in recording history. And then it kind of really connected the dots for me at that stage when I did
Got
um,
you.
go to
And
that next.
so, how did it feel to get some of those A-list calls?
So the crazy thing is, didn't even get any A-list calls until shortly after I graduated SAE, and it wasn't expected just yet because I was trying to use the the what do they call it, the the diploma or the
Oh,
certificate
yeah,
that
yeah,
they
yeah.
give
This
you.
certification. Yeah,
Yeah, the
yeah.
certification to then start running, in one of the studios in Manhattan and, make myself be known, do the hours and, just get working. And before that can happen, I got a call for a session by a new client, a new manager, well, a new client, but the manager was calling in for the client and was asking to have this like emergency last minute session. Didn't know who they were, and it's crazy how it just dropped out of the sky shortly after that because it happened to be the Cardi B session where she came in, with whoever she came in with at the time. And we all know that she's switched, management and teams quite a few times since Bodak Yellow. But it's basically, the point was to say like, wow, I was just doing this whole school thing really just to put myself in a position to like be exposed to more A-list clients. And then there we go, there was one A-list client already on the rise
Mm.
that already has heard about me because of my groundwork beforehand when I started,
So did
basically already working in the field.
Did you know when you were tracking vocals for Bodak Yellow that it was going to be a hit? Did you have a sense that?
So the thing I did feel with that, however, is being that I've recorded with her since her Gangster B volume number 2 all the way up to Motorsport, the song she did with Nicki Minaj and Migos, even after Bodak Yellow. That time span, I was able to see like, okay, there's songs that is more like Bronx, more in her town, her vicinity, those people would cater to it. And then there's songs that's like, okay, I could see more of the world catering to it in a way, because it kind of matched a little bit more of a commercial or a more slower paced type of urban sound that at the time our goal was to match Bad and Bougie that from Migos. So for example, when I worked on Bodak Yellow, I was like, I thought to myself, this is the first song and it's step in the right direction. That's the feeling I got. I didn't really know that it was going to be that big. Nobody really knew that it was going to be that big. They all didn't know. But they did know that they wanted to make something out of her. That is what the F they wanted. That's the F I know they know. They definitely wanted to make something out of her. So, yeah.
Gotcha. Wow, that's cool. So
Mm,
since that time, you've become a pretty sorted out engineer with a very large client base, and,
mm,
both for mixing and tracking. So
mm.
what are some characteristics that identify like a Michael Ashby recording or a Michael Ashby mix? And how did you kind of go about, I guess, developing your own sound so that it's something
Yeah.
people want?
So this is what happened. I've constantly found myself um I used to, before I started buying my own great piece of microphone preamp gear, I was just like, all right, you know how you do. You shop around for a car. What car is one of the best cars, or what car, what these cars is known for great cornering, and that car is great for no best acceleration, blah blah blah. Okay. Now I'm looking and I'm like, all right, we all know Neumann's got, we know why Neumann is loud. And for example, so it's just like now I'm hearing things in new gear and new companies that, you know, nod to like the vintage ones in a respectful way, but bringing something new to the table
Mhm.
without missing out and giving people that substance, that weight that we like about vintage or analog gear, classic gear in general. So what I feel is what gives people that different thing is I found out each step of the way, if I could just record my source as best as I can, that's the better my mix could come out in the end result. So every time I got better at a mix, I would find out, oh, this is what I could have done better in the tracking stage. And then every time I do another tracking stage, oh, this is what I could have been done better at the source before coming into my Pro Tools. And that depends on everything I put before the converter. So I started to really carefully select what kind of analog circuit I want to run my microphone through, what type of microphone I'm using to really mask and shape the sound and color of what I want to use on that person or source that I'm recording. Because I find that's the most effective and organic way to really like transform something sonically that you're trying to, that's the whole point when we mix. We're trying to paint a picture, or enhance the source of whatever it is we like that we captured in the most carefulest way possible. So by doing that, I was just like, I really like the way um this microphone sounds. It doesn't necessarily have to be a Neumann, doesn't necessarily have to be, anything that people are familiar with brand wise. It just needs to have the substance of what we sonically like to listen to
Mm.
when we smile. So I was just like, all right, I've done countless mic shootouts, gear shootouts, and then I just carefully selected one at a time. All right, I want to try this mic first, see how it'll impact my converters mic input first. Then, all right, let me get a mic pre. Let me see how that would impact the sound going into my converter after it leaves a independent mic pre. Then I'm like, the mic pre's dynamics is hitting the converters a little too hard at times, or a little too unexpected or rapidly at times. I may need a compressor. I add the compressor in the circuit. And literally over time, over the course of 10 years, like I carefully was able to see, and you know that saying where they be like, you know, how to, when you know how to use that one gear well, and you learn it well before you move on. Yeah, I basically had no choice but to do that because I was upgrading on a budget. So, but then it taught me a lot, like, you know, just, all right, what you're listening to, this is literally coming out of that unit. Well, how many other things can you do with this one unit? And all in all these applications with these different clients and different styles of music. And then that's what I've just been doing. And it's been a developing process. I'm sorry for the long answer, but
No, no, that's great.
I had like parts to it, like
Right.
layers.
It's definitely like, I guess a couple of different schools of thought when it comes to recording, right? Like how
Yeah.
we could record like super clean and then like use a bunch of plugins to process in post, or really try and get the sound on and the vibe that you want on the way in. And it sounds like that's what you're kind of going for.
Yeah. Oh, so now, yeah, with that said, people, I guess they liked when they come here. Your average studio, for example, is going to have a U87 into 1073, maybe 1176, or CL1B, or LA2A, blah, 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 before it hits Pro Tools or the console if they have an SSL or whatever. Um, or they'll run it through the thing and then bust it out. But same thing, you'll have it go to the console at some point. It still goes to a compressor at some point. But all familiar brands and things that is, they're all using the same thing, you know. So it's just like when they come here, it's like, yeah, it's still going through a real real EQ, real compressor. And I also a real, like, you know, mastering grade converter and shit. So I'm like, sorry again. But so it's, people are hearing real stuff, but it's off a different selection or assortment of products. So it's like, what is that? Who is that? But however, being that I've gotten the chance to learn my gear one at a time so well, I was able to maximize each piece of gear so well. So I've had sessions where they would have a C800G into 1073 CL1B, and just the price of that chain alone sometimes would be 3 times as much as mine. And I would just have a Eden into okay, a GT the TG 500, for example, from and this is actually a real scenario, TG 500 from Chandler, then into my CL1B and into my links. And literally I had these two comparisons, same client. We had one session with that chain, one session with this chain, and he was just like, huh, it's funny how my friends that I brought with me in the studio that day, because he's used to recording with me, they brought him, he brought them to that session. And the friend, you know how when people are in a session, they usually don't know the technical terms or anything, but they said to him, what's up? What's wrong? What's wrong with your voice? Or it sounds different. Because he was like, yeah, you're hearing me behind, you know, a Sony and 1073, and it's just not necessarily the same sound. They were like, you sound different. What? Why? It's not the same thing as what, you know, what I usually hear from where you usually record. And he's like, yeah, because, you know, it's a different chain, and the mic and the chain has a lot to do with it. He was telling that to his guests. And it's funny because then he brought the same bounce back and we did our comparison on these monitors too, because he was just like, yeah, I'm used to listening to things here, now I want to see what something I take from there, what it sounds like here. And it's just like, we'll play all the songs we know and we'll listen to that chain, and just in comparison, based on their opinions, they were like, okay, yeah, we understand their chain is way more expensive by price and by choice and brand, but why is it that as far as what we want from his vocal for the song, it's a lot more drier, slightly darker in a way than what we expected, you know, because he sang on a C800G, but into a 1073, and you know they ran it through a CL1B, And obviously, I don't need to mention where. And this is not a bad thing at all. But this is how these gears are. It has weight, substance, and girth to it. But if you know what each thing brings to the table, you kind of know how to match it up. So I had told him, I was like, there's nothing really wrong with their channel, with their signal chain. It's just the fact that they're not really optimizing each object, each component and stage as much as I am with my stuff. Because, for example, yeah, the Sony C100G costs like well, way more, but at the same time, um, them not being open or aware to the fact that the type of pre that they're sending it into can, kind of also consequence, some of that open, airy top end to a certain degree, then they're not going to be open to the fact that they're still, muttering that slightly by sending it through, like a LA2A or, because you got to know that these little things, they balance it out
Right.
if you want to, so, and they're like, yeah, he understands this, but he's like, this is why coming here, I instantly just get sound that matches the idea of the song instantly, as opposed to, oh, well, here's just a generalization. This is just an expensive chain. Here you go. But then at the same time, you're still 2 steps behind when you got to mix it to get to that point where you already know you got to be for that song, sonically. So that's the point. That's why I do what I do and it gets me to that place quicker as a
Right.
mixer,
For
so
sure.
I do it for me, and at the same time I find out it's benefiting the clients, so it's just a win-win thing, I guess,
Got you.
in that
Well, so
sense.
I guess let's talk about your mic of choice then. Uh,
Yeah,
it's the Lauten Audio Eden, from what I
yeah,
understand, right? So
yes. So
what is it about that microphone that really works for the kind of vocals that you do?
what I find that works for it is the fact that I was like all right, I just need a microphone that there's things that I've respected about, transformer based microphones, circuit wise. And there's things I respect about tube ones. And then I was like, if I get a good tube mic that has certain characteristics, I know I can implement it and use it under certain applications for certain reasons, not necessarily having to have a well known specific brand, but just for those sonic situations, those sonic reasons. So me doing my research and doing window shopping, I came across Lauten and I was just like, wow, they're onto something. But I waited though. I still waited. I was just like, let me see. Um, like I was still because I'm very optimistic and I'm very sure about what I want. So there was a time when they finally dropped the Atlantis. And I was following them way before the Atlantis and all of the I was following them back when they had some of their vintage ones out that they don't have out right now. So I basically was just like, if I get a tube mic, long story short, it would have to be something that I don't want it to be a tube mic that's just off a U47 stature, but then I can't use it in a C12 kind of situation where I would need a C12 or a 251 or, a C100G for that matter. So I was like, if I get a tube mic, and I do plan on getting more tube mics at the time. I was like, I do plan on getting more tube mics, but I was like, as this first tube mic in a while since I was sending one away to like get fixed and remade or whatever. Um, I was like, I need one that can at least do more than one thing. That's what we're getting to. So I was just like, but I waited. And after the Atlantis came out, I liked the Atlantis when I heard it. I listened to it, remotely, and and on many different things. And I'm the type of person, I don't know. It's Brian from Lauten Slaker noticed this about me before I noticed it, but I had a pretty good knack for when I listen to something, being able to re. It's kind of like when you have a photographic memory of something, but when I'm listening to something, I could kind of like have a photographic sonic memory of how I know it sounded sonically. And I would be like, I kind of need that in this that I'm working with. So I like the Atlantis. I was just like, it's cool, but I'm looking for, if I need a tube, like, I was like, it'd be cool if they did that with like a tube circuit or something. But before I knew it, yeah, when I heard about the Eden coming out, I was just like, okay, I'm waiting for the Eden. And then I think that when they mentioned it in advance enough time for me to have to hold out until I get the pre-order or whatever. And then eventually when I got it, because I just had that much confidence after listening to, because they had the Atlantis, then they had Eden little samples. And then once I was just like, I already read up on it, but once I heard it, I was just like, okay, I can definitely try some things with this. And then I was actually originally was going to get a FET 47 from some brand. Don't need to mention them. And then it was pretty much on it was on back order for like way too long. So I was just like, but they told me about it beforehand that it would be on back order. So I was like, if I have, and as somebody on a budget that's upgrading, as the money you put out, you wanna, you know, see what it's worth. You wanna try things out immediately. You don't wanna wait 90 days and you already like paid money for. So I was just like, I'd rather put that money into the Eden, and because that was already ready to go. And that's another thing I like about Lauten. They make it the effort to try to get you the microphones. So that's what I like about them. But I found myself, yeah, basically, if you could brush up on the question, I guess, because
Oh yeah, 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 sure.
if
Like,
that answers your question, yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. I mean,
But that's what made me, yeah,
I know what you mean. Like sometimes you hear some gear, it makes you feel a certain way, and it's like I need that, like that.
that could fit into what I'm doing exactly.
Right,
So, and that's how I figured that. And Brian pinpointed it that because you always there's that part of you where it's like, well, I know that that could work, but now what if it doesn't work for, like, of course it's not going to work for all my applications, I would assume, before even trying it. But what if it doesn't work as much as I want it to work, or da da da? And how soon am I gonna think I want another piece of gear to use beside it? And by the time I've gotten it, ever since I've gotten it, and the reason why I use it so much today is because that's like the one piece of gear I can say it's not, it's just the way it sounds when I put it up. It doesn't really give me the urge to have to really try anything else. It's crazy. So, and then there's people that come in and out from different studios, U47, 67s, 10, C800 Gs. And I'm like, there's no issue. We're just recording with the Eden. We'll recut things with the Eden, and it's still filling the same space in the record with just something sweet, something new. And it doesn't even feel cold to what we are used to hearing because it's still warm, it's still big, it's still what we love about classic records,
right,
but giving us that sheen and sweetness that we need, and a very blank playing field that we work in today, which is Pro Tools. It's very transparent, to be honest with you, and what you put in is what you get
right,
out of that thing. So, and people have their their little concepts about it, but that's plain and simple what I say about Pro Tools. Pro Tools and these computers that we're working with, it's a chance at a blank canvas for us to digitally stir our art colors and do what we want with it. And what you put in is what you get out. So that's why I carefully select the kind of gear that I use before my conversion. And that's why I'm not so big on Apollos and things like that. People realized, they were like, why don't you really talk about universal audio like that? You don't really seem to endorse them until lately with these UAD plugins. Well, because I built my legacy off of the analog circuit that I custom choose for one's voice or recording source before it hits my converter. That ultimately allows me to, that gives me a head start into what I want to mix the record to sound like. basically, and ultimately allows me to spend the least amount of time mixing it here than if I was to make something here that was recorded somewhere else. And that's why a lot of people come pouring in here, because it's more cost effective for them to record here and me mix it down for like, okay, well, a little bit more time than it would have taken me to make something down that was recorded, brought from somewhere else, you know? So, and it's just, it comes full circle. It's just what it's been doing. And then people could become addicted. They're like, oh, I come here for a recording session, and then I leave with a rough mix that sounds like it's like 90% there. This is great. How much more time do you need for me to finish this? My friends thinks it's already finished. I'm like, yeah, well, tell them just it's not finished, but when it's finished, they'll know. But it's great because people already get excited about the records before the records are done. And this is the way music should be. And that's why it's a win-win situation. And that's why the Lauten stays up most of the time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Do you use it
Yeah.
additionally for, obviously you use it on vocals. Do you use it on other sources too? You find that it works for you on that?
Yeah. So as a drummer now, coming into this, I was just like, this Eden sounds like a good luxury tube mic to use with my female and male vocalists when I feel like using a tube mic. But let's see how it does on like, oh, the back of a kick drum, or see, because obviously they claim it can be used on more sources than vocals, so let's use it on more sources than vocals. Hey, what the heck? So I use it and I'm like, wow. Unfortunately, I don't have enough money to buy like 8 Edens and put it around a drum kit, but it's like, it's beautiful that with one source you can put it up, and one transducer, you can put it up and it's like, all right, the sound is taking in, and the way it converts that into that electromagnetic signal going into my gear, and I'm like listening to it, and I'm like, wow, why isn't it that I didn't think of doing this sooner? Buying microphones of a certain standard that makes recording and mixing the music so much more easier, and so much of a different standard. So I was just like, yeah, I do see it can be used on different sources. Luckily enough, I don't really have to record bands too often. So, but me as a former drummer, I'm in communication constantly with musicians that they like to do things with bands every now and then. So they come. And when that does come, I would use the Eden or Atlantis. Now that I have a few, every mic has a calling card. I will say, I'm gonna throw that out there, just because it may not be something you would see on vocals. Doesn't mean you don't need it technically. So although I didn't invest in the Atlantis at first, when eventually I had the opportunity to get a few, um, it was definitely a no-brainer to just take it, see where it could work on. So when I was doing other sources and other instruments, I find that maybe some of these mics that I didn't really care too much about on vocals or on this source works really great on this source. So I started to like, all right, let me use the Lautens on the primary parts of the drums, and let me use the other mics that, the closed miking on the other mics on closed miking stuff. So I don't really have to sacrifice if they hit the microphone. It's not my Lautens. So, but the Lautens just being around help the picture so much. It pulls it all along. So it's just like, that's why it's like this, it's like a drug. You can't, it's like people, and then they're finding out, they're, trying it out. They're like, well, let me get one model, see what it'll do. Won't hurt. And then they're finding out, oh shoot, I'm hooked. I'm becoming a little hooked too. And I just learn to use your ears, and you'll see where it takes you. And that's why I guess, me and Lauten have a really great relationship now, because it's really about the sound. That's what drives us. What does your ears inspire you to go? You can't necessarily just follow. It's not a monkey see monkey do thing. You know, and it's not just, oh, because this is the standard, that is, or this one should sound like, or so, and that's why they say signature sound, because a lot of the microphones, actually all the microphones, don't really replicate any clones. They're not to be any of like what we already know, but they're supposed to fill the shoes of what we already know. So, you know, we can just do what we like to do. So,
All right, on. Wow.
mhm.
Well, thanks so much for the time you spent today,
Yeah.
like talking about your process and your gear that you use and things. Uh,
Hmm.
I really appreciate it. And for any of you out there that are listening, if you're interested in finding out more about Lauten Audio, please head on over to americanmusical.com. And Michael, you want to just shout out, you know, where people
Yeah.
can learn out more about you and
Yeah. So my name's Michael Ashby. I'm more so popularly known for recording Cardi's Bodak Yellow, and various other artists. But you can find me on Ashby Mix on Instagram, ashbymix.com as well. And all my information will be there. My studio, the crematorium, where everybody comes, it will also be on there for booking. So all my information is on my Instagram,
right
the
on.
website, everything. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks again for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Mhm.
And just remember, you can head on over to americanmusical.com for all of your Lauten audio needs. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.